Welcome back. As I mentioned, we have Jerry Slusowitz here, who is here on behalf of Pacific Financial Planners. Well, Jerry, thank you for coming in. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Lisa. I'm glad to be here.
Well, you know, we've talked a lot about investments and income and retirement. And of course, now we have inflation. And, you know, I think we have lots of questions about how to manage our money and how to make it last for a long time. So I'm really glad that you're here today. But before we get into some of those details, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been a financial planner for 35 years now, so kind of a long time. Okay. And been in this area here, Laguna Woods Village, for well over 30 years. I had clients in here in the late 80s.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so I'm very familiar with the community. My parents retired here.
Oh, nice.
I own a condo here in the village as well. That's a rental for now because I live close by.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
Yeah, so you know, I work with the seniors really. Probably over 30 years ago, I decided to work with people on income strategies for retirement.
Okay. Well, you know, let's actually talk about some of those things. You know, we obviously need income to live, right? And you can help advise people on how to, you know, hang on to their money for a long period of time. What are some of the important things that you think we should be thinking about right now?
Well, it's important to understand that there's got to be a mental shift from investing for growth to investing for income when you retire.
Okay.
And I see it all the time because I meet people literally daily, and I look at their portfolios, and they still have this growth mentality. And the stock market's been fantastic, you know, since about 2011 or whatever, so 10 years, but that's a little long, you know, so people should, you know, kind of take that gift that they had and make this mental shift from growth to income investing, which is significantly different. You gotta figure out what's the purpose of the money. And when you retire, the purpose has got to switch from growing that money to distribution and replacing your paycheck.
Well, now let's talk about, you know, taking those distributions, because, you know, obviously if you take it too early, then you don't, you know, well, I guess because of Social Security is what I was referring to, because you can take it early, but then you cut off a lot of the percentage of what you would receive. So in doing so, you need to make sure that you have supplemental income, correct?
Right, and whether it's coming from your investments or if you have rental properties or, you know, mineral rights or something along those lines, some business interests, and a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. And there's what I call the gap years, and that's you could take Social Security between 62 and 70 anytime. But you're right, Lisa, if you take it too early, you're locking yourself in at a lower rate. And the other thing is taxes come into play. So if you get in a situation where you start taking Social Security and you're still earning money, you might end up in a higher tax bracket. There are ways that we could figure out to fill the gap, if you will, to delay taking Social Security and live off of your retirement interest income. And then have that supplement now that when you get into 72 and beyond, when they have what's called the required minimum distributions, RMDs, then you'll have a lower tax bracket later. So controlling taxes is another thing that we look at Pacific Financial, because it's all kind of intermingled. Retirement is not just one thing. Do I buy one stock? Do I buy one mutual fund? It's really having a plan. So when you ask me, you know, about my 35 years, I'm truly a financial planner first, a financial educator first, and then we start talking about, you know, where should you put your money.
Well, and you're also talking a lot about income, right? So you had mentioned to me very early on that you're an income specialist. So when you think about it being from an income specialist perspective, what does that mean?
Sure, thank you, Lisa. It's a big difference. A lot of financial advisors like myself got involved in the 1980s. A lot of people started investing in the community probably in the 1970s, 1980s when they first started having money. And the purpose of the money was to grow the money, okay? And I get it, when you're 30, 40, 50, you've got time to wait it out. But once you get to retirement, the purpose changes and it goes to growth to income. And a lot of advisors don't understand that. So there's this rule out there that says, hey, draw 4% and your money will last. Well, let's take the stock market, for example, from 2000 to 2020. It returned about 6.05%. So it sounds like if you drew 4% off, you could stay with a growth strategy and be fine. But it's the sequence of returns. And the stock market between 2000 and 2003 lost 50%. And then between 2007, 2009, lost more than 50%. And if you went through those drawdowns, you'd almost be broke today by drawing off of a growth strategy.
Right.
So what I look at really is kind of like if you had a chicken farm, if you will, and you had chickens that laid eggs, would you want to live off of eating chickens every night, or could you live off of eating the eggs? And that income is eating the eggs. So we create strategies where your chickens stay alive, that's your principle, and you eat the eggs to live off of, because that is what an income specialist does.
I like that analogy. That's a really good way to look at it, because oftentimes people need those kinds of visuals to be able to go, oh yeah, no, now I get it. We want to, you know, preserve what we have to live on. So that's a great analogy. Let's talk about how inflation is, you know, hurting us or helping us, or whatever the case might be, with our income.
Well, you know, kind of a true definition of inflation, especially for people here in the village, is you're growing poorer every day when you're on a fixed income.
Right.
And that's the problem. That's what inflation really is. It's you growing poorer because the cost of everything around you, gas, food, medical bills, keeps rising. And now they're rising at rates that we haven't seen in 40 years. Right. And if people start remembering the 70s and 80s, you know, those weren't good years. And it's a matter of how deep do we get into it, because this is the beginning of these inflationary periods. So you have to protect yourself against rising costs. Right. And the thing is that the longer we live, the more costs go up. So when you're planning for your income strategies, you've got to plan not only for income today, but income down the road. Right. So it's really important to say, well, geez, how can we, you know, how do we protect ourselves? Right. So there's some simple strategies. Like one, for example, is we all need gasoline to drive. Well, when you go to the gas station, if it's Chevron or Mobil, and I'm not advertising those guys, guess what? There's publicly traded companies that offer that, so you can buy those stocks. And I'm not making any recommendations, but they pay pretty good dividends, and then as you can get the income and the dividends out of it and keep up. So when you're pumping your gas, same thing when you go to the grocery store. There's food companies out there that offer that. So there's plenty of ways to protect yourself, but you've got to have a strategy. You've got to understand inflation's real, and it's detrimental to someone, which is everyone listening probably, living off of a fixed income. Exactly. And you know, one thing that's I think very interesting, and we won't have enough time to talk about it today, but I do want you to come back because I want to talk about what you just mentioned, is that, you know, putting money into companies in which you put your money into. Like many people might even do it yourself now, that you can't afford to go do other things, or you can do it yourself. Well, maybe we should look at Home Depot. You know, there's a lot of things that I do want to talk to you about, especially when it comes to that. Plus, I also want to have you come back and talk about Bitcoin, because that is something that I just heard about for the last 6 days, because my son was here and he's 22, he goes, oh mom, you know, the money is just, you're wasting your money. You need to buy Bitcoin. And I'm like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Yeah, we'll talk about that. I'd love to. Yeah. All right, perfect. I do these financial forum speeches, and we're dark here in December, but we're going to come back in January. It's the last Tuesday of the month. The first one in January is going to be on inflation, but we are going to do one on cryptocurrencies, which Bitcoin is one of the cryptocurrencies out there. So definitely going to circle back with you on that, Lisa. All right, I love it. All right, well, thank you, Jerry. We appreciate it. Well, thank you again for having me. You're welcome. And if you want more information, of course, you can always look up online Pacific Financial Planners or Jerry Slusowitz, although I'll let you figure out how to spell that. We'll be right back.